This meeting is being recorded.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Veronica. So just a quick announcement. The Dropbox has been updated. We record these meetings every week if you want to listen to them. And so we were kind of backlogged a little bit for updating on the Dropbox, but it's all caught up now. So we've got some phenomenal speakers on there. Don can put that in the chat here in a little bit. And then I will turn it over to Joel to introduce our speaker.
My name is Joel. I'm a real alcoholic, and I recovered
Hello,
from
Joel.
a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I always say that because that was information I didn't have during my first 10 years in AA. I had untreated alcoholism. And I found myself identifying as a real alcoholic, as described in our big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. One of my heroes in AA speaking tonight, Jerry Elkins. I met you about 23 years ago, I think, like 1999 or 2000, somewhere around there. And you spoke with Don Pritz. And almost every time I think I've seen Don Pritz after that, you were speaking with him. I even saw all three sponsors, Gary, Don, and you at a conference. And I've always loved being around you. You used to do a retreat in the Catskill in the fall. I named it Jerry's Kids. And I just love being around you. You're a great storyteller and you have a great message. And I want to share you with everybody. I introduce you to Jerry Elkins.
Thank you, Joel. I just simply thank you. My name is Jerry, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January the 17th, 1977. And more because of God's grace, I'm sober through all those years, and not because I was real good at working the steps or anything else real good. I came in here, I was so delighted to be sober. And I've had many years now of just being very grateful to be sober. And I look around this collection of people, and there's several of you that I've known. Joel is one of them, Gary, of course, and some others. And I've just known you all forever, but my sobriety is so interwoven with those friendships. And I'm just going to simply say thank you. Let's see where to go from here. Well, I'm watching Chris eat an apple. I could talk about that, but I won't. I tell you what, my story is, I don't know that it's terribly unique, but I will say this. I came in here and I thought I had completely and totally surrendered. As time continued to unfold, and I hung around more and more with people that had some awfully good sobriety, it became apparent to me along around years 10, 11, 12, and 13, that there was something that I was dreadfully missing. And I wasn't even sure what it was, except that when I look at some of the other folks that were kind of, we're not supposed to have heroes, but I did have heroes. And I would look at those folks and I'd think, God dang, I wish I had what they had. And it never dawned on me that the reason I didn't have what they had was simply because I hadn't done what they did. And if you were to have asked me, have you committed yourself to this program? I would have said, yeah. And it would have been a very breezy way of saying, yeah, I've done this. And, but the truth of the matter is, I don't think I had ever totally comprehended what the word surrender meant. And I was, you mentioned a fellow by the name of Don, and I was riding around the car with him in Denver one day, and he said something to me about surrender. And I said, oh, yeah, I know what surrender means. I know what it looks like. And that didn't seem to faze him at all. He just kept talking about surrender. And I thought, Don, there's no point in talking more about surrender. I got it, buddy. But he kept talking about surrender, and then he began to paint a picture of what surrender looked like. And the longer he talked, the more it dawned on me that I had not surrendered. I really, truly hadn't. I thought I had. I intended to. But you know, we have a line someplace in the chapter we're working on in our book, Emotional Sobriety, and in there they talk a great deal about what this whole surrender concept looks like and sounds like. Anyway, so we were riding around Denver and he was talking about this surrender thing. And the longer he talked, the more it became apparent that that little expression, giving themselves completely to this simple program, it became pretty apparent to me that I hadn't. And so I began kind of trailing around after Don, and in the course of doing that, I met another guy who's in this meeting tonight, and I became acquainted with him, and I began to have a deeper, how do I say this best? I began to have a deeper appreciation for my sobriety. I began to have a deeper appreciation of the 12 steps, but most of all, I began to develop a real deep appreciation of what surrender means and looks like and sounds like. And as a result of that, I began to come up with an idea that works for me, and I don't find this in the book, but I do apply it to my life, and that's simply each day I try to make a conscious surrender to the Spirit, a conscious surrender to the 12 steps, and just a complete and total giving of myself to this simple program. Now, I want to be real careful about how I say things sometimes. Sometimes I know what I mean, but how I convey it isn't always as clear to the folks I'm speaking with as it is to me. And the truth of the matter is, I think I've made a complete and total surrender. And then I would listen to somebody like members of this little collection of people we've got right here, and I'll listen to them talk about their surrender, and it'll become apparent to me that, you know, those folks have surrendered better than I have. And I don't know that we should ever say better or worse than or greater than or less than. I don't like that comparison, but it does. The people that lead us by example will quite often, without intending to, they will share something with us that becomes an inspiration for me to try to do better. And that's, am I getting a little feedback from somewhere?
Hold on, Jerry. It looks like Francis. There you go. Somebody unmuted. It's okay. I'm sorry, Jerry. Keep going.
That's okay. Not a problem at all. It could have been me. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. I had a pretty good thought there for a minute, but it's gone now. But that happens quite often. Gail's my wife. In case you want to know what do I contribute my sobriety to besides the steps and AA as a whole, the next thing that contributes to my sobriety is my wife, Gail. So we have a lot of fun with this, and she sometimes will challenge me, not often, but she will on occasion. So in any event, I rocked along for, I'm going to say 10 to 13 years, someplace in that range. And I want to talk about that mostly is going to be the backbone of what I'm going to visit with you all about tonight. I was active in AA. I made a lot of meetings. I read the steps off the wall, and as a result of reading them off the wall, I talked to you about how well that I was working the steps. And I wasn't doing anything about working anything. I was just reading them off the wall. And I thought I made a hell of an impression on me, but I don't think I impressed much of anyone else. Anyway, but here's the most beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous has such a wonderful way of being so tolerant, I think, because of all of us. I don't think I'm particularly unique in being slow to come to committing myself to really working the program or even living the program. I did the best I could. It was a crude effort. But the longer I stayed, and I'm going to quit using the term sober, the longer I stayed dry, the greater my discomfort became, because I just somehow intuitively began to understand that there were some folks around AA that really had something great going for them, but I wasn't one of those people. I could talk more of a great game than I could do a great game. And I got hooked up with this guy. You've heard his name already this evening, and his name was Don. And Don, I think, felt sorry for me. And as a result, he began dragging me around the country with him, and people thought that I had what he had, and all that I had was, I had a desire to have what he had, but I didn't have it. But anyway, by hanging around with him, a lot of him began to rub off on me, I mean, and then I met some good friends of his. And their friendship with him, those friends, that began to rub off on me too. And it years later, it began to dawn on me that, you know, we have so many really true, wonderful people in this program, and they're non-judgmental. By and large, most of them are non-judgmental. And I picked up a thought from that, and the thought that I picked up from that was, I hope to God, because of what was given to me and how it was given to me, that I never come across as being judgmental when somebody's talking about their sobriety. Whatever their sobriety is what it is. And I go with that. In fact, I wrote something down, but now I can't find out where I wrote it down. And basically, AA is I can't pull it out of my memory right now, so I'm not even going to try. By the way, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I will tell you this. As I've gotten older, I find it more and more difficult to pull up things in my mind that I know I want to share with you all, but I can't formulate them in a way that's a coherent message. So if you see me kind of stumbling along up here, or down here or out here or whatever, it's because I'm doing the best I can. Now, you may not think I am, but I will tell you, I'm literally doing the very best that I can do. But when you reach a certain age, the old cells upstairs just kind of roll around in kind of it's almost like somebody's taken a mix master up into my head and mixed it all up, and that's what you all are living with, or I'm living with. You have to listen to it just tonight. But I will tell you something, and one of the things that I have the greatest fondness for is that AA provided a place for me to hang out. And while I wasn't real sober, I hadn't made a lot of great strides in my spiritual life. AA still provided a means whereby I could come 2 or 3 times a week. I'd sit down and we'd talk about AA's program, and somehow it worked to the point where I just kept having another week, another year, another month of sobriety. And as God is my witness, I can tell you that most of that was a gift to me, not as a result of anything that I did, as much as the wonderful nature of this thing we call our AA program. The one thing that I did bring here, and I brought this from the very first day on, was I really had a strong desire for sobriety. And I remember I was brand new. I hadn't even gone to my first AA meeting, and I'd been to a treatment facility here and a treatment center someplace else, and I was seeing doctors and psychiatrists, and I just wasn't doing very good. I never could quite get a hold of what you guys had. Mostly it was because I wasn't doing what you guys were doing, but that was neither here nor there. I just couldn't get this. And yet sobriety seemed to follow me around. Again, I want to change that word sobriety. Not drinking was what kept me going here, just not drinking. And you know, if you're sponsoring somebody and after they have a number of years of sobriety, if they seem to be rather uncomfortable, maybe they're in some sort of pain, it may simply be that they were like I was, which was simply, I was here, I was doing, at least on the surface, what I thought you guys were doing. I talked a great game, but I really hadn't done what you guys do, which was make a complete and total surrender. And I stress that simply because someplace along around years 10, 11, 12, 13, someplace along in there, it dawned on me that I had never made a really honest to good surrender. And because I know of my inherent character defect, which is I like to talk about being good. I don't want to be good necessarily, but I want to talk about looking good. And so I'm great at just trying to look good. And I don't know if anybody else in this collection of folks here tonight understands what looking good is all about, but that's what I did, is I just wanted to look good. And I learned the lingo, you know, we can all, not we all, I can sound good, I can look good without being good. And but anyway, I got this into this year, 10, 11, 12, someplace along there. And there's a thing called psychic pain, and psychic pain I think is very real. Psychic pain was I began to wake up in the morning and I didn't even want to wake up. And the day would progress along and we get along toward evening, and evening time was even worse than the morning. And I kept thinking, what is it I'm not doing right? I kept thinking I'm doing something wrong. My whole life I kind of felt like I was always doing something wrong. And so anyway, I'm struggling along in those years that I'm mentioning. And I kept running into these people that had what I wanted. And that was when I ran into this guy out in Denver by the name of Don. And he got me into his car one day where I couldn't escape. And we began riding around the streets of Denver, and he kept talking about this surrender thing. Well, I'm thinking, come on, give me a break. I've surrendered. I know I've surrendered. But the truth of the matter was, when he painted a picture of what a real surrender looked like, it became apparent to me that I hadn't. So I went home that morning after riding around in the car with him, and I didn't tell him anything. But I went home, and in my own crude fashion, I began to have a meditation time where I just confessed to the Spirit that, hey, listen, everybody's talking about this surrender thing, and I know I have not surrendered. And if I can get your help, I will try to surrender right here and right now. And I'll make another commitment, and that is I'm going to try to surrender every day. And when I do that surrender every day, I want it to be a conscious surrender. I'd love to take credit for that idea, but it's not mine. I read that. I was reading a book by old Chuck C. years ago, and Chuck C. talked about making a conscious surrender. And I thought, that sounds pretty good to me. So I began to wake up each day, and that was the way my morning meditation started. God, I make a conscious surrender. And with your help, I'll mean it, and we'll go from there. One thing led to another, and once I made that conscious surrender about a week or two every day, it became apparent to me that I had been looking at the steps up on the wall, and I was working the steps off the wall, and I had what we call off-the-wall results. And I suspect there's some people in this room that I'm looking at who understand things a lot better than I did in those days, and they know that the off-the-wall results that I got wasn't very pretty. But one thing led to another, and at least I didn't drink, and I was sober enough and dry enough that I walked up to this guy and I said, hey, is there any chance that you would be my sponsor? And he looked at me and he says, no, I don't think so. And I had never had anybody in AA, and all the time I'd been coming to AA, say no to a request like that. Would you be my sponsor? And he says, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, what do you want me to do now? He said, well, if you want to work the steps, I'll show you what I did. But as far as being your sponsor, I'm not going to do it. And so I thought, well, listen, you think that you're not going to be my sponsor. I think you're going to be my sponsor. And we went forward with that kind of an arrangement. As far as I was concerned, he was my sponsor. As far as he was concerned, I was not his sponsee. And we traveled together for the next 20 years until he passed away. And as far as I was concerned, the day he died, he was still my AA sponsor. I still think he was my sponsor. Now, there's people in this little group here tonight that have become, in their own way, my sponsor, simply because they've become a really good AA friend that I can talk to about anything. I can share anything with them. And as a result, they are acting in their own way as a sponsor for this old drunk alcoholic. Anyway, I finally got immersed into the steps. I don't know that I've ever had anything that so perfectly fit the character flaws in my makeup as the 12 steps did. There are things that I uncovered, and I want to talk about one of them specifically here in just a moment, but I don't think I'd ever had the opportunity to have my flaws revealed to me in the way that AA reveals them to me. And with that in mind, I began to this time around through the step process. Of course, I had somebody guiding me, and I would constantly ask questions. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? And his answer was always the same. I don't care whether you're doing it right or not. You're doing it. And so that was the basis that that I began to try to somehow commit myself to the 12 steps. And when I talk about our program of recovery, that's the way I refer to it today. It's a guide for me to uncover, and this is almost verbatim out of our big book, It's a guide for me to uncover the basic flaws in my makeup. I am a chronic liar. I just, if you ask me what kind of mileage I'm getting on my car when I drive it, and if I'm getting 15 miles to the gallon, I'll tell you I'm getting 20 miles a gallon. And I honest to God can't tell you why I tell you that, except I think 20 miles an hour sounds a little bit better than 15 miles to the gallon. And it makes me look smarter. I picked a better car than some other people. And I do that on just a gazillion little things. I always come up with some, let's see. I see people bailing out on this meeting, and I don't know if I'm just boring everybody to death or not, but I guess if that's what's happening, you didn't pay to get in, you don't have to pay to get out. So, where was I, Joel? It's not important. I'll pick up a thread here somewhere.
The chronic liar thing.
A chronic liar. God,
Yeah.
how could I forget that?
And it looks like people are going off sometimes because they get disconnected and they come right back on. So the number's the same. Yeah. don't worry
Okay,
about
well,
that.
thank you.
And
That
a lot
makes
of
me
times
feel-
people get up to get a cup of coffee, you go to the bathroom, but they're still listening.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a lot better because I'm very sensitive and I get awful hurt if I think somebody is losing interest in the valuable information I'm imparting to them. And I'm not charging you for it. So, it's the same price whether you stay or go. And anyway, I finally got around to getting my first real honest to God inventory. And I don't think it was that good, except it was more or less, I was sharing things with this fellow that I had never shared with anyone. I never planned on sharing them with anyone. And so I've got all these secrets that I've had buried inside of me for years and years and years. And now I'm sharing them with a fellow that I happen to respect. That made it a little bit harder for me to share them because I thought, if I share this stuff, he will probably never let me come back into his house again. Well, long story short, I got it done. I went back and I shared it, did the fifth step, talked to him about the amends I needed to make. And I got ready to leave and he said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna fry some charcoal some hamburgers here later on this week. Why don't you bring Gail and come back over here and have dinner with us that night?" I thought, wait a minute. I just told you all these things about myself that nobody would ever invite me back. And yet you're telling me that I can not only come back, I can bring my wife. And I thought that this guy would tell me to never show up on his doorstep again. And that wasn't what he said at all. And I didn't understand then what I understand now, which is, I've listened to quite a number of inventories in my AA life. And I don't think I've ever heard anything that shocked me or that repelled me or repulsed me to the point where I would say to somebody, don't ever come back to this house again. I've never had that happen. And isn't that a wonderful thing? If AA offered nothing than a haven where those of us who have kept dark secrets, or we thought they were dark, secrets our entire lives from other people, and now we can come in and we can dump this stuff to somebody, and with any luck at all, somebody we respect. I know everyone that's ever shared any time with me and their capacity as a sponsor or as somebody just listening to what I have to say. The fact that they would honor me with just listening to what I had to say has just been a gift greater than anything I could have ever hoped to get. I thought AA was about not drinking, and what I've discovered is AA is not only about not drinking, it's also about finding a useful way to live, a way that I can be a decent husband, I can be a decent father, and I can be a decent comrade in our AA meetings, and I can do the same thing with other folks that my sponsor did with me, which is I can listen to people without making any judgment. It's been quite a while since I've made a serious judgment about anyone. And I'm not so sure that that hasn't been a greater gift to me than it is to the people that I did not make judgments about. And I think about that, and I think about, there is so much that AA has to offer to me that I never counted on. I hadn't counted on it at all. And it's just been wonderful. I thought when I first got sober, we had 4 people in my little group in this little small town in southeastern Kansas. And I'd go there every Monday night, and we'd sit and drink coffee, and with only 4 members, the stories all just kind of repeat themselves over and over and over and over again, but nobody seemed to care. If that's what happens, that's what happens. So, and every once in a while we get in the car, and I'm a guy that loves to do 12-step calls. I don't know why. When I first came into AA, the opportunity presented itself, and it was a guy that was having a pretty serious problem with drinking. And in our little group, we had 1 woman and 2 other guys and myself. So there were 4 of us, 3 men and 1 lady. And so when we'd go on a 12-step call, we would not take the lady with us, because some of the environments in which we found ourselves was not really fit for a lady. So we asked her if she would mind us doing it without her, and she said that'd be fine. She understood. So anyway, we made an awful lot of 12-step calls. 10 years went by, and I had managed to put a few dollars into the bank, and so I bought a motorcycle. And one of the other guys in the group at that time, he said, "Well, Jerry, if you're going to get a motorcycle, I'm going to get one too." So you know how us old drunks are. So anyway, Jim got a motorcycle, I got a motorcycle, and we became the 12-step calling motorcycle riders. The 2 of us together, we drove all over southeastern Kansas looking for people that we could that we could 12-step. And so people would hear us coming up to the house on motorcycles, and we just had a ball. And I don't know if we ever helped anybody get sober or not, but I learned the magic of AA, which is whether they get sober or not, I don't know, but I got to stay sober. And I still stress that today. In my 12-step work, I don't know if I've ever helped anybody, and I've done a lot of 12-step calls. Don't know if I've ever helped anyone except myself. I have managed to stay sober all this time as a result, and I know this is one I don't know much. One of the things I know for certain is my 12-step work is what has managed to keep me sober. Joel, help me watch the time, because I want to stop here quickly, because I want to leave time for some other people to jump in and share. Is that okay if I do that, Joel?
Pretty much this is an open meeting. You can talk as long as you want, or you can stop whenever you feel like. You can call on other people to share. It's pretty open-ended.
Okay, well, I'm going to shut up pretty quickly here, but I want to give Joel just a little bit of a round of applause. When we were trying to get me hooked up, I thought I could work Zoom just fine. And so Joel said, "You know how to work Zoom?" And I said, "Yeah, Joel, I got it. It's a piece of cake. I got it whipped." And I think Joel must have spent 20 or 30 minutes the first time we tried to hook me up, because it took every minute of that time for me to finally get squared away. But we finally did, and here we are. So, but I could talk forever and ever, but I will tell you this: I have 3 children, none of whom, by the way, are alcoholic. I have 3 brothers. I just lost one here not long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, passed away. And I have that family, and I have these, my children, my grandchildren now. And I tell you what, all of those things are gifts to me as a direct result of going into an AA meeting many, many years ago. And I walked in, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was there for, except I was being threatened with a nut house. And, I should clean that up. I was threatened with going into an institution, let's put it that way. And so I did the best I could back then, and I'm still doing the best I can. And AA has just been absolutely the greatest gift that's ever been given to me. And so as long as I live, I'm going to be trying to give this away to somebody else. And they may not want it, but I'm going to try to give it to them anyway. And anyway, with that, I think I'm going to shut up. And I don't know who I turn this over to, or if I get to chair it until we finish up. But I can see everybody in this meeting in these little squares. So who? Let's see, I can call on people. Yeah, I can. Whoops, what did I do there? So with that, what happened? Okay. Chris, I know you. I know Joel. Why don't I just throw this meeting open and whoever wants to jump in can? Will that work? Can I do it that way, Joel?
Sometimes Glenn has some questions. He'll like moderate and probe you with some questions. Would you like that to happen?
I would love that. If somebody wants to do that. Did you say Glenn?
Sam, Glenn, I call him by his last Sam.
Okay.
Jerry, that was a great share tonight, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Like always in AA, you can give the poorest share in the world, and whoever's talking to you says, that was the greatest share I've ever heard. And I thank you. I thank you for that. I really
Oh, yeah.
You guys
I believe,
are great.
I believe
And
Tom
there's a
has.
lady I can look at by the name of Diane. Diane, you've got the most engaging smile that I think I've seen in a long time, and I thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, beautiful. I believe Tom has his hand up. Tom, would you like to share?
Jerry, thank you so much.
Tom,
And,
thank you for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't miss it. So a couple of things, actually 4 things that I wrote down, but I thought it was funny. The thing, I didn't think he'd ever ask me back to his house. Not only did he ask you back to his house, but as I understand it, you were at his house holding his hand when he passed away. So that's a pretty good invite.
That's a real good invite. Yes, it is. And that's still one of my fondest memories, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all appreciated your being there for him. So the 2 Jerry Elkins stories that I tell, one is the one where you and Gail go out to eat. She orders a glass of wine and she drinks it. And then she orders another one and she's not drinking that one. She's kind of sipping, but it's not going anywhere. And you're looking at the glass and you say to her, well, aren't you going to finish that? And she said, oh, no, I'm starting to feel a little out of control. And you said, to you, that sounded like fingernails on a blackboard, because when you hit the second drink, that's the first time you're feeling like you're in control. And I heard that and I understood that completely. That's what it did for me. And now I'm driving the bus, like, the world and its people aren't coming at me like they were. I love that story. I use it a lot. The other one was when you told Pritz, you said, well, I went to I think it was an ACA meeting or something. They told me that I've got a human bill of rights and I've got my rights as a human being. And he's quiet and he says, Jerry, we don't have any rights. We gave those up at the third step. Now, I've told that story a lot. A lot of people don't like that story.
No, they don't.
They don't dig that story. You know, it's like, that's a little too much, but would you want to talk about that a little bit?
Tom, you're so wonderful and so kind in just bringing that up. Yeah, as I was so fortunate with the guy that was my sponsor, and we were driving around one day, and I mentioned this whole concept about rights. I said, well, I can't remember. Tom, do you remember how the topic came up?
You found a book and this
Oh,
book
that's
told
right.
you.
Yeah, I'd been in a bookstore and it talked about my personal Bill of Rights.
There you go.
And
There you
I
go.
was so damned excited when I found that. I bought the book. It was at the tattered cover there in Denver, Colorado. Big, big, beautiful bookstore. Anyway, I bought this book and I raced over to Don's house immediately. And I knocked on his door and he let me in and I said, hey, listen, I got something I got to show you. And he said, what's that? And I said, listen, I understand that I have a personal Bill of Rights. He says, come on in and sit down. We'll talk about that. Well, when this guy said we're going to talk about something, what that really meant was you're going to shut up and I'm going to talk to you. So I went in and I thought, well, where's this headed? And so he said, so you've got a personal Bill of Rights, huh? And I said, yes. And he says, Jerry, you don't have any rights. And I tell you what, it truly broke my heart, because by that time I had known him long enough and I had come to depend on him enough that if he said I don't have any rights, I took it so seriously. I don't have any rights. I said, well, what do you mean? Because I got to have an answer. And he said, well, Jerry, we gave away our rights at the third step. And I says, I don't remember doing that. And he said, well, you did. Let's look at the third step again. And he went over it and it dawned on me, yes, I gave up my rights when I took the third step. And Tom, you're absolutely right. This is a story that you want to know where the door to the meeting hall is, because if you tell this story, you're going to want to get out that door pretty damn quickly. You don't win a lot of people wanting to pat you on the back and say, that was a great share, Jerry. You really did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But I did. When he told me I had given those away. But here was the key to that whole conversation. When I said, when we were having this, and he says, we don't have any rights. And I said, what do you mean? He said, this is important, we gave those away when we took the third step. It wasn't you gave them away, but we gave them away when we took the third step. And I don't know that I've ever had a greater gift given to me in Alcoholics Anonymous than the simple understanding that, hey, I gave my rights away when I took the third step. That's number one. And number two, the guy who was acting as what we today would call a sponsor, he said, we gave away our rights when we took the third step. It wasn't you did this and you did that, but we. And I've never forgotten that. I know where I was sitting in his house. I kind of vaguely recall the time of day that it was. And to this very best of my memory at this time, I just, I don't know that I've ever had a greater gift in Alcoholics Anonymous than just a simple fact that, hey, I gave my rights away. Now, the trailing part to that simple concept is this. If I gave away my rights then, and you gave away your rights, that's the other key, was that this guy said he gave away his rights too. Now, where do I go from there? And if I've given all my rights away, then I don't have any way that I can make any demands from the spiritual program that's been given to us. And so I can start with just a complete blank slate and I can go forward from there and receive whatever gifts come to me as a result of this spiritual program that we commit ourselves to. And so that was the whole understanding around this whole thing about giving away my rights. And I've never regretted that. I was so delightful that I had a guy that was willing to talk about this at length. And but you know, when he told me that we gave those away in the third step, he was also including himself. So he never, I don't think my sponsor, and he turned out, I called him my sponsor. He wouldn't call himself my sponsor, but I called him my sponsor, if you can understand that. Anyway, I don't know that I've ever had such a remarkable gift in my life as starting from ground zero going forward, and AA has just been giving me one gift after another. So Tom, thank you for reminding me, because I don't want to ever forget that. That was kind of a cornerstone of my sobriety. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Jerry, I appreciated so much you talking about surrender, because to me that, you know, I'm 36 years sober, and that today is the most important thing to me that I've gotten out of this whole deal. And I don't know if it was you quoting Don, or if Don, I heard Don say this, but I think I heard Don say this, and he said, you know what surrender looks like? And we all go, yeah, well, yeah, I think I know what surrender. He goes, well, when an army surrenders, the first thing they do is they lay down their weapons, because they don't want anybody shooting at them anymore. They don't want anybody to think they're still engaged, right? And then the next thing they do is they sit on the side of the road and they wait for somebody to tell them what to do. And how that translates to me today is my weapons are my intellect, my ego mind. And that's always been the weapon, okay? So that's the first thing I have to surrender. I have to stop believing what my mind is constantly telling me, and just say, that's not necessarily true. In fact, it may be very untrue, you know? So I'm gonna wait on the side of the road for my spirit to tell me where to go next. And that's literally what surrender looks like for me today. You know, the surrender is surrendering my plans, my ideas, my, you know, need to know what's going to happen next, every bit of that, you know. And thank God for that. Thank you so much, Jerry. It's wonderful to be with you.
Tom, thank you. Tom and I have had a chance to walk this pathway quite a bit together as a result of we used to hang around at this guy's house a lot there in Denver, and we had some great times, didn't we? What was the other thing? There were two things.
With surrender,
Yeah.
lay down your weapons and then sit down by the side of the road and wait for somebody to tell you what to do.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question correctly. Somebody, when I opened this up, somebody said there's two things. One was the surrender. What was the other one? It's not important. One of the beauties of AA is there's a lot of brain damage, and we just kind of laugh about, you've got brain damage, I got brain damage, so who cares?
Yeah. Hey, Jerry, Joel, I think has his hand up. Joel?
Joel.
Yes, I told everybody what a great storyteller you are. And one of your stories that I love, it's been with me for years, was when you were explaining your experiences with the amends. And you said you had little amends, like you stole office equipment, and that was kind of pissy ant. But then you talked about the golf balls. I'd love for you to tell that story again.
Well, you know, Joel, I kind of suspected from you knowing me as long as you have, is that that golf ball story was going to come up. I had been sober. I'll see if I can tell it the same way this time as 50 times I've told it before, and I probably won't get it correct, but I'll do the best I can. I had been sober for a little while, and I loved to play golf, and I had gone to this driving range, which for people who don't know the game of golf, a driving range is just where you go get a bucket of balls and you go out to the driving range and you hit the balls and practice. And so I went to this driving range one time there in Denver, coincidentally, and I got my bucket of balls and I went out there and I began to look at the golf balls, and they were the nicest new golf balls I'd ever seen in my life for a driving range. Normally, driving range golf balls are cut up, bruised up, scuffed, they're just terrible, terrible shape. But this particular driving range, maybe it's just I happen to show up at the right time, but the bottom line is the guy gave me a bucket of balls and they were almost all practically new. So I went out to the tee and I began to hit golf balls, and I turned around and looked to see about the guy who was managing the little driving range to see if he was paying attention, and he wasn't. So every time I'd reach down into this bucket and pull out 5 or 6 balls, whatever a handful was, I would put 1 or 2 of them into my golf bag. And by the time I got through with that particular practice period, I probably had someplace between 25 to 30 brand new golf balls. And they all said XYZ driving range or something like that. They all had the name, but I didn't care. They were brand new golf balls. So I put those in my bag and drove off, never thought another thing about it. And a little while went by, maybe 6 months, a year, someplace along in there. And it began to grind away at my conscience that I had stolen quite a number of golf balls. And it really began to plague me. And the longer I went after going through the 5th step with my sponsor, and I just knew that I had to do something with these golf balls. So I finally came to the conclusion that I'm going to have to, Joel, you're going to have to help me here. I'm trying to remember exactly. I was going to go back.
I think it was kind of like by accident. You went by that place and you realized that you owed him an amends.
Yes.
So
yes, you're
was-
right.
it was just serendipity.
Yeah, serendipity. So, but then I lose track of the story from here. So I went up to say, that, hey, listen, I stole a bunch of golf balls from you. I don't remember if it was 6 months or a year or whatever. I stole a bunch of golf balls from you, and I need to make amends for that. Of course, he didn't understand what the word amends meant. Now the story drops off in my mind. What happened?
Boy,
then, Joel?
I'm sorry. Basically, it was his response to you. He says, I'm willing to make amends. I'm willing to pay, the financial, worth of those golf balls. And the man turned around and said to you, the amends you can make is never show your face in here again.
Never show up here again, ever. And I tell you what, for a man, I've always been plagued by having way more pride than I should have. And when he told me he didn't want me to ever show up there again, I tell you what, I could have crawled from where I was standing out to my car, because I couldn't have gotten any lower than I was at that moment in time. Oh, it was just horrible. Just don't ever show up here again. Jesus, God. So yeah, Joel, thanks for helping me go through some of that parts of that story.
I
that
love those
forgot.
kind of stories because it's the same kind of itsy bitsy things that will just, put a hole in your stomach if you don't do something about.
Yes. Yeah. And the heck of it is, and I don't know if anybody will agree with this or not, it's not big stuff. It wasn't though I stole 200,000 from a bank or something. It was a bucket of lousy golf balls. I bet you they probably didn't have a value much more than $25. $50 at the most. But I stole the balls, and I remember walking up to him and trying to make amends, telling him what I was doing. And he says, I tell you what you can do, don't ever show up here again. And he couldn't have said anything that got my attention or had more of an impact. The guy may have been an amateur psychologist, I'm not sure, because he really got my attention. Don't ever show up here again.
Hey, Jerry,
Yes,
you could have said to him, oh, it's okay. I've been thrown out of much nicer places than this.
that's right, Tom. And I have been, by the way. Okay, does somebody else have something they wanna talk about? I'll talk about anything. You guys somebody have something they want to share?
Hey, Jerry, I have a question from somebody that I think is really good. It says, Sam, can you ask Jerry, what was the difference between not being surrendered and then surrendered? What does this mean or look like? He was doing the steps, etc., but after surrender, how did working the steps differ? For example, what was the quality of life or surrender he noticed?
Great question. Great question, and I'm going to do my very best to answer this. And it won't be nearly the quality of answer as the quality of the question itself. Like I said, I have always had a tremendous amount of pride. And here's the hell of it. I don't really have a real good reason to to have a lot of pride. I don't. But I remember. What's the question again?
The surrender, the difference between how did you know and what was the quality of life or your experience after that real surrender, like, you know, really being surrendered. You're talking about that with Don.
Okay. It starts, you're Sam, aren't you?
Yep.
Sam, it starts with, again, it kind of gets back to pride. I really have. I've just had such a god awful amount of pride in my makeup, and no real justifiable reason. At that time, I was not a college graduate. Wasn't until many years later that I managed to go back to school and finish college and some other things like that. But the difference in surrender at that time was simply this. I am not any worse than anybody else, but I'm sure as hell not any better than anyone else either. And all my life, I've kind of looked at people, one's up here and one down there. And of course, you know where I am. I'm always up here. And after that particular surrender that we're talking about here, it dawned on me that, you know, I might be able to carry a message that somehow would enable somebody to get sober, to stay sober, and to live a sober life for a long period of time. And that's what's been given to me. And it was a result of not really understanding what I was doing or why I was doing it. I just finally got clear on the fact that, hey, Jerry, all your life you've talked a good game. I'm a heck of a talker, but I'm not real good at doing the deal. It is to use the best vernacular I can come up with. And so when I finally began to understand that, hey, Elkins, you better just stick to your knitting, and we've got the greatest program in the world. And I tell you what, the big book that I use for my step work, same as yours, is so comprehensive and so easy to understand. I was looking at something in my big book earlier today, coincidentally, and it dawned on me that when Dr. Bob and Bill put our big book together and some of the other literature that followed with it, either they were the most spiritually guided people that I've ever met, or they just were brilliant, brilliant people, because the language in our book, the sentence structure, the paragraph structure, the way the book's laid out is, and I'm no English professor, don't get me wrong, but I tell you what, I am just, anytime I pick up our big book, I'm once again amazed at how thorough our big book is in conveying meaningful thought and direction. It seems like if there's a place where one word will work or another word will work, somehow Bill and Dr. Bob managed to use the word that's best. And that happens to me over and over and over again when I'm looking at our book. I mean, we have had absolutely remarkable teachers in our lives. For those of us, I believe, I feel strongly that Bill was probably the greatest teacher that I could have ever come across. And somehow he spoke in a way or wrote in a way that just, it got my attention, it grabbed me, and it still does today. And God, I've been a student of the big book for a long time now. And I still am I'm thrilled anytime I pick up the big book and I read a passage that I thought I've read 50 times or 100 times before. I look at it today and I think, wait a minute, I didn't see this before. I didn't understand it before like I understand it today. And it's just, when they talk about our big book as being a living instrument, I happen to believe that. My big book is always appropriate or applicable to the moment. If I need it for something today, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, I'll pick it up, pull out that same passage, and it'll be applicable or appropriate for that time. It's just a remarkably magical instrument. And so and so once in a while I'll hear rumors about somebody wants to rewrite the big book. They want to do this to the big book or do that to the big book. And I am a fellow who just really hopes with all my heart that we don't ever make any significant changes to our big book, or for that reason, much of the other literature that has been made available to us. I believe that what's been given to us is just, I'm going to sound like I'm preaching here pretty quickly, so I better shut up.
Hey, Jerry, we had another person ask, and it might take a little while to think, and if you can't recall this, that's okay, but you did a lot of workshops with Don Pritz. What was some of the best advice that you've received from him? That was one of the questions that I just got for you. What was some of the best advice you received from Don?
Well, let me at least lay a foundation here. I think I used the word advice once with Don, and he says, Jerry, I don't give advice. And I know I was kind of bowled away by that comment of his, because I thought he'd been advising me all along. And by that time, we'd been together for 10 or 12 years. And it finally, he tried to make it clear, because he knew I was a little bit confused by his response. He says, Jerry, what I'm doing with you is I'm trying to share my experiences with you. And anybody's experience is valid. It doesn't make any difference what that experience was. Your experience is as valid as my experience, or vice versa. And so if I'm sharing my experience, I don't think you can get in trouble with it. I don't think I can get in trouble, because people have come back to me later and they said, you know, Jerry, when I asked you X, Y, Z, and you told me your experience with it, I don't know that I can agree with that. And my response was always the same. Listen, I'm not trying to give you advice. I'm just trying to share what my experience was around a certain issue. And to this day, I've always, if somebody gives me a response like that, hey, their experience is every bit as valid as anything that I have. Does that, I tried to kind of compress that.
Oh, yeah. That was great. Yeah, it was perfect.
Okay.
Don, would you like to share?
Thank you so much for sharing, Jerry. I'm always humbled and warmed by people that have gone so far before me. Thank you. And I appreciate your time to show up and talk to us. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I was listening to your, the various things that popped out for me, and thank you. I gave away my rights during the third step. Holy shit. Tom, why didn't you tell me about this? I didn't even know. I had no idea. Nobody ever told me this.
You never asked.
I could have probably surrendered a whole 20 years earlier.
Sure.
But yeah, right. So and I like it because the question that the person asked about surrender, what's the difference the before and after? You might want to get my number, because I'm the girl that just ran, not giving up in sobriety as far as I could run it. And everybody around me paid the price for that. And I owed more amends sober than I owed drunk. So I'm a good example of this. If anybody wants to know, give me a ring. And it is truly a result of not being willing to let go of my perceived rights, and
Yes.
which I love how it connects to the letter that we read here, which says, "For my dependency meant demands. My demands are my rights. I demand to have things go the way I'm entitled for them to go." And then that these demands for the possession and control and conditions of the people and conditions that surround me. And I can tell you the difference for me, the watershed moment is suffering.
Yes.
Just absolute suffering. And the difference between, for me, being surrendered versus rightful, demanding versus entitled, is pain. When and Bill says it in here, when that demand is not met or that dependency is not hit, and I love you, I'm hearing you, Jerry, I'm hearing top approval all over your story. You better treat me like I'm the one.
Yes.
I have this problem. I know about this. And everybody that lives around me needs to know too, that I'm running the show. And if y'all would just get in line, everything will be fine, right? It'll all line up and we'll all be happy, especially me. By the way, that's
Especially me. Yeah.
These are third step talks, I think. Anyway, when I live that way, I cause myself and others tremendous amount of pain. It is indeed miraculous that I did not drink, because my result of being unsurrendered, unwilling to say I'm not the most important person in the room, is I need relief from me. It is unbearable to live with me, especially for me. The people around me are suffering, but I'm suffering more than anybody else, because I can see what I am doing and I can't stop.
Yeah.
And every now and then that 3 a.m. wake up where you go, shit. And the truth starts talking. I need a drink for this. I need a drink to stop the pain. And when I've had various levels of moving forward toward a deeper surrender. And each time the relief that comes is significant. And it is sobriety producing for the next phase of my development. And I'm tough. I mean, I can muscle up to a lot. I can probably drink all y'all under the table. Maybe not in this group. But the truth is, at some point, I can't take it anymore without help. It's too much for me and I'm blocked. And now I got to have either release coming in some form, and usually it's coming at your expense and then I'm going to slam a few back. And that's the truth. I just need it. So the difference for me, the before and after, is surrender means peace, relief, a breath of fresh air. I can breathe again. Which is what I'm trying to get when I throw back a shot of vodka. That's what I'm after. And yeah. So thank you so much for sharing, Jerry. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Well, thank you. That was terrific. You said something you just said just now was, I need relief from me. That was a phrase that I heard when you were talking just then. And boy, that really struck a chord with me. I need relief from Jerry.
I remember Chuck C. They were talking about the intro to Chuck C.'s book. Was that Kurt was talking about the other day, where he says the conflicts of sober reality became untenable?
Yes. God, yes.
Yeah, that was good. So one of the questions I always like to ask, especially people who've been sober as long as you have, or what have been some of the ups and downs that you've had in your sobriety, let's say in the last 15 years?
Probably the largest down that I had. I had been married for 27 years, and the marriage became incompatible. And I want to be real clear and emphasize something. It was not my wife's fault or my ex-wife's fault. It really was not. I was, they talk about being selfish and self-centered in the extreme. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have. And it wasn't until I had this surrender that I'm talking about, this real honest to God surrender, that it became apparent to me that, yes, I really was terribly self-centered. And I had been as far back as I can remember. And I understand. I talked to some psychologists and psychiatrists when I was in school. And a part of that's, I don't like the word natural, but it is part of our natural maturing process. When we're young, we are going to be naturally self-centered and selfish. Well, the years go by and we're well past the point where we should have grown out of that, and I'm still there. And so to finally have this experience in AA, and I began to looking at some of the inventories that came out of me. I thought, my God, I couldn't have been that bad. But the truth of the matter was, I was that bad. And it was all a result of thinking that was so god awful. I look at it and I look at some old inventories. I don't throw, I keep a few of my inventories. Most of them I throw away, but I've kept a few, and I've looked at those old inventories that I kept. And I thought, my God, Jerry, how could you have ever thought this? Or how could you have ever thought that? But I did. And the revelations that come to us as a result of having to put this stuff down on paper. And in our book, it talks someplace about doing this in black and white, meaning we write it down. And the minute I write this stuff down, and then I go back after I finish the writing, and I go back and I look at it again, I think, Jesus, God, I had no idea how flawed my thinking was, but it was. It's just, and I, of course, I've raised 3 children, and anybody that's raised some kids knows that there's a few difficulties with having children, but my kids are no problem at all compared to myself. And I have 3 of the greatest kids in the world, and that's simply because I look at them today and I think, my God, if they'd have been anything like me, I'd have disowned them. But they weren't. I mean, they were all 3 pretty good people, and they still are to this day. And I am so grateful that I've had the experience of being at a place in my life where I can sometimes I can be a little bit of an example for those kids. And it's a wonderful feeling to be at least, I don't know where I'm going to go with that, so I'll just stop there. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the experience of AA. I'm grateful that I have uncovered the character flaws and defects that I've uncovered, and I'm so glad that most of them, when it says we can ask God to remove them, I tell you what, I am so glad that there is a power in the universe great enough to help. I'm going to use the term fix me, actually remove things. This is not about a process of trying to get something as much as it is a process of getting rid of something. Tom, you know what I'm talking about, I know, because I've heard you talk before. I'm looking to see anybody else here that maybe had a similar experience. Anyway, that's just a process about getting rid of stuff, isn't it?
Yep. Absolutely.
Bob V
Yeah.
just had a talk a little while ago that was really good. And he said, you know, the process of spiritual growth is a process of subtraction, not addition.
Beautiful way of saying it in very concise form.
Yeah. He was
And
going
who
off
was,
of one of those,
who was that?
Bob Bazance, but he was going off of one of these talks that Chuck C had told him a long time ago, where he says, you already are everything you're ever going to be. And what you're looking for, you're looking with.
Yes.
And so, you know, the process of spiritual growth is a process of subtraction, getting rid of all the ego garbage and letting the truth come out. I think the surrender thing too, it's interesting what you guys were talking about. One of the major differences is that I stopped having ambitions for myself. It means that putting that up on the altar, you know, like all these ambitions, if I put my ambitions and my desires and what I think are going to make me happy in these areas, or what I think I need to be okay, I put that stuff up on the altar and just say, God, whatever you want for me here.
Yes.
Now here, I'm not going to try and author my life anymore. What do you want it to be? And help me to participate in it in the role that you would have me participate in it. And it's so much more peaceful. It's a whole nother, and then the adventure really comes. You're not sitting there power driving your way through life with this delusional, grandiose horse shit, you know, and just pumping mud all the time. That's been, you know, my experience with that. But we have, what about Maggie? Is Maggie around?
I am.
What are you up to?
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah.
Sure can.
That's so funny. I've been trying to find my raise hand function and I couldn't find it. So thanks. Jerry, thank you so much. It was really such a pleasure to get to know you. I've never heard you before. There are so many wonderful people that I've met that knew Don P. and I never met him. So I don't know, that just warms my heart. What you just said a minute ago about like not gaining things, but it's really more letting them go. I'm coming up on 13 years. I'm going to celebrate 13 years next week. And I'm having one of those experiences like you were talking about, like between 10, 12. It's been years of this now. And it's like something's not right, but I can't see what it is.
Right.
And it's like, I need to keep my hands off of trying to fix something here. And it like, and Dawn put her finger on it, like there's enough suffering that comes from this that it makes me willing to be willing to whatever it's going to take to free me up from this. But it's, I can't really articulate it. But when you were talking about, yeah, these years, it's like, yeah, I'm doing everything. I've got service positions, I'm sponsoring, blah, blah, blah. But there's something inside that still has this feeling of like, there's something blocking me. And you know what? Right now, it's okay. Because I've come to this meeting for like 2 years now. And I hear people like you and with, 13 years. And other people said it 20 years. Or Bill Wilson, in this letter, 23 years sober. And he says, suddenly I realized. And so I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I just loved hearing you share tonight. And it gives me hope because there's nothing that needs to happen. I just need to just stay here. So
Bingo,
thank you.
bingo, absolutely. Just stay. No matter what's going on, just stay.
All right. Well, Jerry, do you have anything you want to close with or anything you thought of before we wrap it up?
Let me just say, you folks, I mean, as I was just listening to Maggie just now, I am just amazed at you guys and how wonderful you all are. And I thank you for being the type people that you are. I thank you for showing up on a cold night. And I can't thank you enough. I wish I had a better way to say thank you. And I don't, other than what I've just said, thank you. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I see some faces that I haven't seen in a long time, and it's absolutely terrific. So thank you all very much.
Well,
Thank
Jerry,
you, Jerry. Love you.
you're
Very
very
good.
loved,
Too.
man. Everybody here
Merry
really
Christmas.
appreciates you. So we'll close this in our normal fashion, which we'll mute ourselves, go to our inner room, and say the Lord's Prayer to ourselves. For all who care to join. Thanks again, Jerry. We really appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Jerry.
This was Jerry's, was this your first Zoom, Jerry?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Jerry's
Oh,
first Zoom.
wow.
Well, we appreciate it.
So I didn't stumble around too badly, Joel. Thank you for your help.
Great job.
Jerry, you
Great
This-
job.
passed with
this
flying
meeting-
colors.
That's
This
amazing.
meeting
Give
now
you a
will be in
little
your
ADD.
drop-down list. When you go to a meeting and you hit the arrow, the drop-down, it'll say emotional sobriety, and you'll be able to log on same time next week.
You come see us.
Yeah,
Okay.
come back.
So 7:30. No, 7. We did it 7:30.
7:30.
7:30.
7:30. Thursday night.
Yeah, and next
Gotcha.
week we have
All right,
we
you'll
have
see me.
Mildred. Yeah, we have Mildred F coming on next week from Canada. She's awesome. If you guys, did you know Mildred, Jerry?
Yes, I do. Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
she's a lot of fun. She's done she'll be a blast. So really look forward to it. Look forward to seeing you all. Good night.
Happy holidays, you guys.
Joel,
Jerry,
thank you.
any questions, want to go to any other Zoom meetings, give me a call. I'll help you out.
I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
Joel.
much, Jerry.
See you next week.
Good kids.
Happy holidays. Love y'all.
Yes,
everyone.
great
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
to you all, too.
Holidays.
Christmas Eve.
Bye from Australia.
We'll see you
Bye
next
from
week.
Australia. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy
What's
holidays,
Charles- Where
everybody.
did Charles go?
Hmm?
Where did Charles go just now?
Oop, he left. He
Oh, he left?
must have
Okay.
logged off.
What is his name? It's mine on my screen. It was all run together. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I don't know his last name. It's a
F?
Charles F and then something else.
Yeah,
But
that's it.
I don't know his last name.
I
Yeah.
don't either. So I thought maybe, okay, we won't worry about it.
Well, Merry
Okay.
Christmas and thank you again for sharing with us,
Okay,
Jerry.
thank you guys so very, very much. You're wonderful. You really are.
we'll
Okay.
see you
be
next
good.
time.
Be good, kids.
You know how to log out now?
Yeah.
Yeah, do I just hit leave, Joel?
Leave, just hit the leave, yeah. But
I
like I
hate to
said,
leave, I hate to leave you all.
well, you can come back next week.
Yeah,
There are
come back.
also a
next
lot of other Zoom meetings. If you are interested in this format, I could show you a lot of other good Zoom meetings to attend.
Well, most of, I'm a kind of an old fuddy-duddy. Once I meet a bunch of people that I really dearly care for, that's where I want to go back to. So you'll see me in this group.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Good.
You're more
Okay,
than welcome.
thank you now.
A
All
lot
right.
of
Thanks,
good
Joel.
stuff out there.
Maggie, thank you, dear.
You're
Good night, all.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay.